Last time in this Surah Ar-Rahman series,
This is our book, guys. It's our book. And and you're reading translation, like, I don't understand it. I have a hard time relating to it. And that's why I don't even know. Stop with the attitude. Stop being lazy. Stop making excuses and give the book what it deserves.
Ar-Rahman allama al-Qur'an.
To help you follow along and reflect more deeply, we've created a companion workbook for this series. Download it at bayyina.com/Rahman.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyid al-Anbiya wal Mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. I'd like to actually first start. Usually these things are said at the end, but I want to start with that. I want to start ICCC by talking about them and the hospitality that they've shown me and the support that they've shown me and our team. And just really a round of applause for them and their volunteers, because they've just done a fantastic job. And I think they're extremely accommodating. They're for someone like myself who travels and gives talks and lectures and classes and things like that, sometimes some communities are very hands-off and some communities are too pushy, right? So they don't give you space to breathe. These guys are just right. They're very supportive. Anything you need, they're there. They're very helpful and easygoing, and at the same time, they're not overbearing or pushing or anything like that. So I really appreciate that, and I hope that Allah Azza wa Jalla preserves this community. Yes. So what I want to start with this evening, we're only going to have one session today, and then I'm going to open it up for your questions. And I was going to take actually want to start with your contemplations and your thoughts about the surah. Anything that you reflected on. I gave you guys three lenses: the lens of language, the world of the Quran, and then also your own world. So if there's any brave souls that would like to share a reflection, I'd love to hear. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
The five lenses, I used 3 or 4 of them, and I reflected on the first 2 ayahs only.
Yeah.
About the lens, number 1, you called wording.
Yeah.
And as it relates to the first ayah, you use the example of time travel, and you said the most advanced technology, like an iPhone, if given back to the 1400 years ago to the Arabs, they wouldn't know what to do with it,
right?
Because you need a manual for life,
right,
to operate, a manual for the operation manual.
Yeah.
That's very true, but I also see something different in the first 2 ayahs by looking at it through the literal lens of language or wording, they called it.
Sure.
Here's what I see. Ar-Rahman allama al-Qur'an. I learned from these 2 ayahs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started this amazing surah with the rahmah. And from His rahmah, He taught us how to live, where to put our priorities in all areas of life, and how to interact with others, what to aspire to, and finally how to die, actually, is all in that surah. Allam al-Quran, that Allah is telling us, this is the operation manual that we run, that should run our lives. And you said that very clearly. But also Allah in this ayah, to me, emphasizes, He puts a lot of emphasis on knowledge and the benefit of attaining knowledge early in the surah by opening with Allam al-Quran. He taught man with this book, implying that this is the book of all knowledge. The first thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to know about ourselves is that He blessed us with His rahmah and gave us a purpose for our lives and the ability to learn, to access knowledge, and to transmit and contribute with our knowledge. From the second ayah, خلق الإنسان علم القرآن, Ar-Rahman علم القرآن. From the first 2 ayahs, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala draws our attention to the importance of having rahmah in our dealing and the importance of the ilm and at-ta'lim. Because when Muslims focus on adding positive value and took purpose of ilm at-ta'lim seriously, they changed the world and they succeeded in removing civilization in general and the European in particular from the dark ages into the light of knowledge and application of new knowledge to what was discovered earlier. They add to what was discovered earlier in a never-ending quest to make this world a better place to live for all humanity. The early Muslims transmitted their knowledge to the Europeans, which were wallowing in darkness. The European thought that knowledge is evil at that time. Then came the Muslims and showed them what is possible with knowledge when applied properly and for the good cause. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directed early and the Muslims to pursue knowledge, they succeeded in making amazing, unprecedented discoveries in the fields of knowledge and made the greatest contribution to mankind's civilization, still benefits today from the early Muslims' contribution 1400 years later. And this is all because the Muslims took the word Iqra seriously, and they backed it up with knowledge and massive action. Be it in the field of medicine, chemistry, mathematics, engineering, space, literature, and the liberal arts even. The early Muslim excelled and were the leaders in all these areas, all because of this one command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Iqra. The West benefits today from the efforts of the early Muslims and their fruits of knowledge and labor. The fact that the West is advanced today is because the contribution of the early Muslims, we said that a few times, and then transmitted their knowledge to the West through al-ilm and at-ta'lim.
Yeah.
That is the greatest contribution to humanity made by an early Muslims who took, again, the commands seriously of Allah. Now, the second lens, the world of the Quran. The first two ayahs talk to me about the past nations like Fir'aun wa Qawm, Lut wa Ad wa Thamud, who did not follow the instructions manual and they transgressed, so they were punished in the dunya and they will be punished in the akhirah for their defiance and transgressions. I also get from this ayah that the best way, the best way to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to appreciate Him by recognizing that we would not exist without His rahmah, and to extend the rahmah to all of Allah's creations, and that is our existence is useless without a clear purpose in life that this ayah gave us. Through the lens number 3, which aims to apply the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help improve our lives' experiences, and knowing that I have defiant impatient personality, I can learn to surrender and to become more obedient and more patient with others. I can be less judgmental and more forgiving for those who do me wrong. I can pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me beneficial knowledge and make me benefit from the knowledge that I acquire. I am taught to help others and do more righteous deeds also. The last lens, number 4, not the last one, number 4, is about connecting with the ayahs at a deeper level. I started learning the Quran much more seriously, and I'm presently enrolled in Tahfidh Quran, Tadribat Aqliya it's called. It's photographic reading of the Quran. Supposedly you can memorize the Quran in such a short time, so I just enrolled in that, and I enrolled back here also for the recitation. And also this week has helped me to change my relationship with death, because I have young kids, and well, not young anymore, but I was afraid of death. This week, after listening to you and after the lessons, I really am not that anxious anymore.
MashaAllah. That's so beautiful to hear.
So that's really what I get away from it. I am not terrified of death. Actually, I'm longing to meet Allah. And that's
SubhanAllah.
basically-
May Allah Azza wa Jal give us all of that. Thank you so much. Any other ladies' side? Anybody like to share? Yes, all the way in the back.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So I know you were talking about the lenses, but you started with that first mindset of just grounding ourselves in Allah's word is perfect and I am not.
Yeah.
I think that's what resets this for me, because if you've grown up here, you're commended and, recognized for having critical thinking as a high schooler, as a college student. You analyze old textbooks, right? So one of the biggest things for my kids is, well, I don't understand this, so that means this doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
And that set change is what makes it easier now. Like 2 decades ago, when I was reading the ayahs about what the men get, and there's no, mention from Allah on what women will get,
Right.
it didn't sit right, because to me it was like, well, if it's not mentioned, then that means it doesn't mean that we're not going to actually get anything, right?
Right.
But as you start to like internalize, hey, I'm the one who doesn't understand, right? Allah's word is perfect. And then obviously getting older, you start actually not thinking about, okay, what does it not say for me? It's almost like, well, Allah protect me from being one of the criminals that he talked about. You know what I mean? Like the longer you live, the more sins you've committed, you stop thinking about what you may not get in Jannah because you're just more concerned about the other side being what you end up, you know. So, but I really did appreciate that lens of, not the lens, but that mindset of you're not perfect, right? Allah's word is perfect, but that's hard because as kids, Allah's so far away and you don't know how to grasp that. Like Allah's perfect. Well, what does perfect even mean, right? It's hard.
Yeah.
So it's just really connecting back and opening your mind up and then being okay when you don't understand. It's a constant journey.
You know, what you bring up is so important because we have to understand the difference between the answer to that question that a child might have or you might have had when you were young and you had that question of the Quran, and some Christian has that question of the Bible. Because a pastor can sit there and say the Bible's perfect. So, you know, don't be critical of the Bible. And they can say, you know what, that really touched me. I'm not going to question the Bible anymore, right? So we have to, on the one hand, what I said applies, but there's a difference in approach to what we do with the Quran to what anybody else does with their book. Because if we don't make that distinction, then they get to say the same thing about their religious tradition, and we end up in you have your truth and I have my truth. But we actually believe we have the truth, right? So one of the things that I want you to think about, and I'm glad you brought this up, is that whenever Allah says something and He gives us some kind of wisdom, on the one hand, I have to have humility. But on the other hand, one of its conditions is ayatul lisa'ilin. These are ayat for people who ask questions. You wonder, you have to ask, why would Allah not mention, for example, I do ask the question, why did Allah not mention the rewards, the spouses of women? And I suggested some answers that I think make a lot of sense after having spoken to a number of women on the subject. I didn't mention an experiment that I did, and I thought maybe that was a one fluke experiment, which is why I did it again in Pakistan. And it was the same result. But the experiment was actually in New York. I had a group of kids, a couple of hundred kids, 100 boys, 100 girls. And I asked them to, these were preteens and teens. And I asked them to write down if they can have anything they want and they will not get in any trouble. You don't have to tell me your name. And you can keep your answer a secret. And you just tell me what you want. And there's no worry about halal or haram. Don't worry about if it's forbidden or bad or good. No, it doesn't matter. Just whatever you desire, if you could have it right now and you would not get in any trouble and nobody would mind, your parents wouldn't mind, nobody would, what would it be? Just write it down on this piece of paper, right? And I gave all these kids a piece of paper on the girl side and on the boy side. The boys were done. Like they were done in like 10 seconds. What was interesting is what happened on the girl side. What happened on the girl side was, hey, wait, can we have some more time? Wait, so can I have another paper? Can I have another paper? And then there was also, what did you get? What did you, oh my God, this is so hard. No, wait, I changed my mind. Can I have it back? Can I have it back? No boy asked for their paper back. But the girls' side, there was a diversity in thought. There was a diversity in what they want. There was an uncertainty about pinning everything they want to one thing, you know? And there's actually, this is the nature in which Allah created a difference between men and women. And you know, one of the things you said, Allah didn't mention it. I want you to remember something. When Allah doesn't mention something, it's actually more. It's actually more. So you know how we in Surah Ar-Rahman, we saw that Allah said that you're going to get ihsan, the best. The word best is more than the trees and the gardens and all the other stuff that He mentioned. Doesn't cover what? The best is something more. What's also really cool in Surah Qaf is لَهُمْ مَا يَشَاءُونَ فِيهَا. They'll have whatever they want there. You know what? That covers it. But He says وَلَدَيْنَا مَزِيدٌ, and we have some more. What is this more? You know? So wonderful, wonderful thoughts. But I actually want you to, one of the things that really helped me solidify my faith, and this is going to sound a little controversial, but I'm going to share with you exactly what my journey looks like. sometimes I'm studying something in the Quran, and then the first, I have my own thoughts on it, my own notes and my own conclusions, and I'm not sure about my conclusions yet, but I'm at least writing them down. Then I go to the tafsirs, the people that have studied and discussed the Quran and explained the Quran and stuff. And we study a lot of different tafsir in our group. We study the classics, like the Tafsir bil-Ma'thur, like Ibn Kathir, Qurtubi, Tabari, Jalalain, the early works. We study, the legal tafsir, particularly things like the Al-Qurtubi, for example, or even a Shawkani. Then we'll study like the linguistic and literary tafsir, like the Zamakhshari, and some of the philosophical tafsir like Razi and Nazm al-Durar, and then come to the later mufassirun that are rooted in the tradition, like Alusi and Ibn Ashur. Like, we're gonna scan the universe, because it's so incredible to just think about the fact that there were people that dedicated their entire lives to studying this one book from all these different continents and all these different centuries across history. And we get to have the juice of their life work in front of us, right? So I'm very humbled by having even access to that stuff. But even after having access to that stuff, sometimes the question you had in your mind is not answered, or the answer isn't satisfactory, right? And then you start wondering, am I crazy, or is something wrong with all these scholars, astaghfirullah? How can I think that they don't have the answer? The reason is, they had questions in their mind and they answered those questions. When they read the ayah, they had a certain number of questions in their mind and they attempted to answer those questions. But as humanity moves forward and our experiences as human beings move forward, we get new questions, right? And when we get new questions, we seek new answers. So the work that they've done is actually a lot of times asking older questions that have already been answered. And sometimes our questions are the same. But sometimes our questions are not the same. So our answers are not going to be the same. We're going to have to seek out new answers to some things. So that also happens in the course of my study. And it's actually a really interesting part of my study. Then what I have to do is, I was like, okay, you know what? I have some crazy thoughts, but I need to talk to a bunch of people to verify how crazy I actually am. So I'll talk to Dr. Sahib Saeed. I'll talk to Dr. Akram Nadwi. I'll talk to a number of scholars that I lean on and trust and get their thoughts on. People that are rooted in Islamic studies and scholarship. I'm actually, in my group, I'm the only not scholar. Everybody else is a scholar, right? But I give them a hard time. Oh man, I don't let them go. Like if they say this is the answer, I was like, yeah, no, it doesn't make sense. Because I have to humble myself to the Quran, but I'm not going to humble myself to less than convincing answers, right? Because Allah wants me to be a thinker. And that actually sets our religion apart from every other religion. We're supposed to be people of thought while maintaining a humility to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? I'll give you just one quick example of that. I don't like naming names ever, so I'm not going to name the name. But I was listening to a lecture one time, and this fellow made a comment about the Quran. This scholar, actually, someone I respect. I listen to lots of his lectures. And he made a comment about an ayah in the Quran. And he said, we all know that Allah has given men a degree over women. We all know that. I was like, we all know that? I've been studying Quran for 20 years. I didn't know that. How do we know that? Because Allah says this in this ayah, and he cited a part of the ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah. And I'm just left scratching my head, like, what just happened? And everybody's okay with it because they've heard it a million times. I'm not okay with it because I don't see that's what the ayah says. So I go to him after the lecture. I put him, not in front of people, backstage kind of thing. And I say, hey, so the ayah, like, it wasn't talking about women. It was talking about divorced women. And it was talking about when a man divorces his wife, how many months before he can still take her back, and has the advantage. It's 3 cycles, right? ثلاثة قروء. And in those 3 cycles, he does have a degree of advantage over her. That's the ayah's context and subject matter. It never used the word women. In fact, it used the word them. And the word them is a pronoun referring back to a noun. And the noun is al-mutallaqat, divorced women. So why are you taking this and then saying this is talking about all? If you want to come to that conclusion from some other thing you've studied, great. Why are you using this as your basis for that conclusion? He goes, yeah, your opinion exists. But, scholars agree. I was like, yeah, but why did they agree? I'm not finding myself agreeing because the ayah is not agreeing. That's not what it's saying. you know? And if we make that bold statement that, they all have a degree over us, do I have a degree over Aisha radiallahu anha? Technically then? Or Maryam? Or because I'm a man and she's a woman, according to the statement that men generally have a degree over women, do I have a degree over my mother? I don't see that working out. Because then you start running into problems in so many other teachings in your religion, right? Because who has degree over who? So that's what I mean by having a critical mindset while maintaining humility and ultimate loyalty to the Quran. And also on this note, I get a chance to go to Islamic universities in the Muslim world, madaris, students are studying, they're studying 5, 6, 7 years sometimes, learning ilm, becoming ulama, getting the stamp of a sheikh, right? And they want me to give a lecture to these students. I'm the non-scholar giving these to-be scholars a talk, right? And but many of them follow my work and they listen to my lectures and stuff. I was actually pretty shocked that's going on. So the lecture that I always give them, always the same one, you have teachers you've learned from, that you love, teachers that have taught you your deen. And for many of you, not knowingly, I've become that teacher. Like you've followed hundreds of hours of my work, right? But you know what? Your loyalty isn't to me or to your teachers, or your loyalty has to stay to evidence. Your loyalty has to stay to the most convincing argument. And if you find yourself disagreeing, then I'm not saying you should be impressed with your opinion, but you should be thorough in your disagreement. Like if I disagree, I really have to be grounded. Not just, I feel like I don't like your conclusion. My feeling's not enough, because that's again, lack of humility. But if I am going to disagree, I'm going to dig deep into the evidences and not have any conclusion until the evidences speak for themselves. And if the conclusion is not conclusive, I can't say either way, then I'm okay with saying it could go either way. I should be okay with that, right? But if we develop that mindset, can you imagine what a different kind of ummah we become, right? I have colleagues that I love, that I absolutely love them. And on some issues, I completely disagree with them and they think I'm crazy on certain issues. Completely. But I have my reasons and they have their reasons and we debate them. We actually debate them. And that's completely okay. They don't become a kafir in my eyes or deviant or lost, and I don't become that in their eyes. There's just a difference in how we are viewing certain things. But we gave each other a safe space to debate that stuff, right? To discuss that stuff. I don't think the Muslims, Sunni Muslims especially, I don't know about the others, because we know about our own family situation, right? We haven't created a safe place for us to discuss and contemplate and question, right? And so one of my hopes also one of the hopes is to do deeper work on the Quran, but at the same time, one of my hopes is to bring scholars together, bring experts in different fields together, and to actually honestly debate certain issues, openly discuss certain issues, and gain different perspectives, and hear different perspectives out. Instead of saying, no, don't talk about this, people will get misguided. Homie, what time are you living in? People will get misguided. Do you not know what's already available? Like the only way, I feel like the only way we can save the future generation from massive confusion is to actually take these issues head on. Like to actually discuss them and to actually be able to hear out what criticisms or thoughts they have and what the Quran has to offer as an answer. So wonderful, wonderful thought.
Coming up next time in this Surah Ar-Rahman series,
ayat of the Quran, Allah says that they were stitched together. They were stitched together. Okay? So the thing with stitching is when cloth is stitched together, it becomes interconnected and inseparable. Right? So you no longer see a thread, you see a consistent cloth. Right? And that's the image Allah gives of the Quran. Uhkimat ayatuhu. Ihkam actually means stitching and weaving. Right? Now what that means then is when you're studying a subject in the Quran, an ayah in the Quran, first of all, it was stitched together inside a surah. Right? So the first thing I have to really think about is what are the connections being made inside the surah to understand this ayah? That's the first most important thing.